Grab your beverages and turn up your interweb. Solving the world's problems 12 ounces at a time. It's Dudes and Beer.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome to episode 131, a special Wednesday broadcast of the Dudes and Beer show. I am Chris Jordan, your host. With me, as always, is the stalwart and worthy Stephen Bishop. Sorry for the delayed show, everybody. I was actually at work in Massachusetts, so it was a successful gig. You know? It was a great gig. Tonight, we are so proud to have with us the makers of an upcoming movie that is presently has a GoFundMe campaign, When We Were Apollo. And we're going to let them get into it and give us the full scope of the project because it's absolutely amazing. Like I was telling them, as someone who was brought up in Houston, the space program was it was a part of my life. Like, it was like going to the Nutcracker at Christmas. You always had a trip to Johnson Space Center somewhere during the year. You know, and I loved it.
How often did you go?
Oh, easily every year, something like that, with school or just with family.
Right.
I had family that lived in the area, stuff like that. And, you know, it was right down the road. It was great. And I loved it so much that, like, I got into model rocketry. It's what spurred me into wanting to be an inventor and design circuits, things like that. Yeah. And that's what a lot of this movie is about. And what a lot of people don't understand, I'm going to read a little bit of my intro that I did on the internet, but on May 26, 1961, President John F. Kennedy made a speech before Congress declaring that America would undertake a new scientific exploration program intended to take the first American astronauts to the moon of the Earth. This program would culminate in one of the largest industrial and scientific efforts the world has ever seen, eventually employing tens of thousands of engineers, scientists, and civilians across the country. And with that intro, I want to introduce proudly Zach Well, who is the director of We Were Apollo, as well as John Filson and Giovanna Aguilar, producers for When We Were Apollo. Thank you so much for coming on the show, guys.
Hi, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you for having.
Thanks so much.
Oh, absolutely.
Thanks for having us.
Well, and I want to get into the story of y'all, because I'm a project-oriented person. Even this, whenever I found Steven, you know, like there's a story to how Steven became the co-host. There's always a story.
There is
to how people meet, and especially to how collaborative. I
want to know that story.
Oh, it's an interesting story. Yeah,
it's always interesting with me around.
It was over many beers, and I invited him to be on episode 2. And we're an adult show, so I'm not afraid to say it. He started telling some stripper stories, and I was like, well, I've hung outside and smoked cigarettes and had a couple beers with this guy, and he's cool, but man, that was just entertaining as hell. I was like, you want to come back next week?
Yeah.
So
you want to come back next week?
Yeah, it literally just organically happened, and we've become like best of friends. We hang out all the time, and collaborative people especially tend to kind of gravitate toward each other.
Right.
How did you guys meet? How are y'all associated?
First, Chris, thanks so much again for having us on.
Absolutely.
I started working on the project probably about 2 years ago, and the first phase of the project for me was really to try to create a short film that I could take to festivals, try to get some attention that way. And I took a 7-minute version of the film to a festival in Palm Springs this past April, and Giovanna was there showcasing a film that she had just finished producing on. And it's, I guess it's kind of funny how things work out. We had, before festivals start, a lot of times you are, encouraged by the festival to try to get to know the other filmmakers. And so I was kind of putting the feelers out on Twitter.
Sure.
And Giovanna was one of the only ones that was responding. She was we just kind of got into a nice little exchange on Twitter. And if that wasn't enough of a sign that maybe we had a future together, my wife, who went to the festival with me, met her independently of me. I came out of a screening, and I found the two of them having coffee, and I said, hello, who are you? She said, I'm Giovanna Aguilar. I said, Giovanna, we've been speaking on Twitter for the last
we've been tweeting back and forth.
Dude, that's cool.
Exactly.
Yeah. Isn't that a great story? That's a great story.
That is cool.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting that you say that, because I'm one of those people very much that even right now, the show that I am presently on is like utterly lacking in communication, and it destroys me inside. And I just can't work with people that can't communicate, So whenever you were like, oh, I'm going to try and meet some of the filmmakers at this place, and she's the only one that responds, hey, that'd be the only one I'd want to work with. Like,
it's kind of funny how that works out, right?
Yeah.
People are going to film festivals to network and get to know one another, but it's amazing how silent how silent things can be sometimes. I don't know. People are worried about pushing their own projects.
Yeah.
I think.
Go ahead, Giovanna.
I think it's really important to come together as communities to share stories. And when we have a platform, for instance, where we were at, I think it was the American Film Documentary Festival in Palm Springs. What was wonderful is that we had the opportunity to review the other filmmakers' work through the information that we were getting online. And I really fell in love with Zach's piece from the beginning, because I grew up in, my dad being a huge aficionado who just loved everything to deal with space exploration and the moon. So that's what spoke to me. And what was really amazing was, meeting Mary, and she being an advocate of her husband's work. But that was one of the films that was on my list to see. So it was very serendipitous. And what can I say now with John, he's on the line? I mean, it's an amazing ride. These guys are so talented. I'm so excited and very privileged to be working with them. So,
and John,
how did snippet of our story?
How did you come into this creative triumvirate there, John?
Yeah. So I'm like the Adam Horowitz of the Beastie Boys.
That's a good.
Mike D and MCA already had a good thing going, and then I came in and hopefully making it better. But I met Zach actually through mutual friends when I moved out here to LA recently, actually earlier this year in February.
Oh, wow.
My wife and I moved from Washington, D.C., and we immediately clicked because, I think you can kind of tell when you just really have a good synergy with people.
Yeah.
This one didn't happen to be over many beers, but we've had beers since, and we really resonate, I think, on some of the motivation behind this film, which is really remembering what it's like to just go all out for an incredible goal and do it together with other people, and just the feeling that engenders for all the people involved and all the people that are watching. And then I resonated with that, and I hope that I know the film will capture that spirit that the Apollo program and all of its workers had. Well, so I was eager to join.
Yeah, I would have been too. I mean, quite honestly, what intrigues me more than anything else, because we talk about it a lot here on the Dudes and Beer program, is the quick and rapid loss of memory in society. Like the Apollo program was 50 years ago, close to, and 50 years is a very small scope of history. Very small scope of history.
Right. Yeah, when you get down to it.
For all of this information to have been lost, scrubbed, it just blows my mind, like how little information there actually is other than the people that were there.
Well, and also when you think about the fact that we've now had, 2-3 generations now that separated from going to the moon. And it's amazing how many, younger people today either don't know that we went or don't understand that we stopped going. I can't tell you how many younger people I've spoken with that thought that the space shuttle went to the moon, and other people that flat out just don't think that we went there. It's amazing how that.
My great grandmother was one. She absolutely believed that was done in a Hollywood studio.
Your great grandmother?
You cannot do that.
Your great grandmother.
Oh yeah,
really?
Oh yeah. No, she was hardcore about it.
What I like to tell people about, faking the moon missions is, did you ever see the visual effects back in the 60s?
Yeah.
And that was the best that Hollywood could do. I'm pretty sure that that even with NASA dollars, we couldn't make a quantum leap all of a sudden overnight like that.
Exactly. Well,
even if Stanley Kubrick did,
that's true. Hey, he could have done it. Anybody, he could have done it. But literally, folks, just so you know, like I'm a huge conspiracy theorist. I'm not going to lie. I believe in the concept of conspiracy theory because conspiracies exist, as do theories.
It's kind of like questioning
they should really be called conspiracy hypotheses,
right?
Not conspiracy theories, because hypothesis comes before theory scientifically. You see, but there's a fact, folks. There is a laser that shoots to the moon and bounces off a mirror that they put up there every single day, and that's how they find out the tides and how close the moon is to the Earth and what time high tide and low tide and all that kind of stuff is.
That's badass.
So we went there. There was a dude that went and put a mirror on the moon.
We did go there. Absolutely.
End of story. The rest of it's all just really cool stories. And speaking of cool stories, when did y'all... I guess, John, when did y'all first start, after really melding this concept together, when did y'all start reaching out to people, and where did y'all start?
We really dove in a few months ago and started with a Facebook page that Zach had going. But, those things grow exponentially, which means great. Once you have a lot of momentum, then it's growing really fast. But that also means when you don't have a lot of followers and a lot of momentum, it grows really slow. So we watched, as interest and followers and comments would trickle in. Sometimes we would post something and it would be, 4 likes, and I'm sure others listening knows how that feels. But as more and more people have been catching on to what we're doing, I think we've quintupled our followers, and
wow.
We've just been partnering with a lot of really great organizations that have been helping us get the word out, and the concept, I think, sells itself. This isn't necessarily stories of the astronauts and other figureheads that have been recorded before.
Yeah, those have been told ad nauseum.
Right. Yeah, over and over.
It's everybody else who maybe they have fantastic stories that only their families know.
Yeah. That
very soon will be lost forever. So
exactly.
This is an effort to preserve history that, in a way, belongs to all of us. And I think a lot of people who may have a story, their own Apollo story, or maybe they have an Apollo story in their family, they don't necessarily think that it's special or interesting. So part of our job has been really letting people know that what you did, and however small you think it was, it was part of something really great, and that's valuable history that we all are interested in.
Yeah. And I mean, like I for instance had a grandmother, my father's mother, actually like worked in a munitions plant in World War II in Alabama. Like she was one of the wrench women, out there. We can do it. Like. Mm-hmm. Pushing it for the war effort and stuff like
Women
that.
Did that.
Like, and like I said, it's so sad how quickly we lose that concept. Like I said in the intro, it is literally one of the most large industrial and scientific efforts ever known to man. It employed, the only thing that might be as large would be the Manhattan Project.
I was going to say the Manhattan Project.
The Manhattan Project probably had about the same number of people working on it, but compartmentalized, and they had no idea what they were doing apart from each other.
It was sworn to secrecy, like you had no idea.
And there were hundreds.
Apollo was the Apollo was the single largest initiative in the history of mankind in peacetime.
Exactly.
We're talking about over 400,000 people that worked over the course of that decade to get us to the moon and back.
Exactly. And, it was during peacetime. It was still a nice little flex of muscle, though.
It's an astronomical number. 400,000.
Sure.
But 400,000 people over a decade.
Right.
I mean, it took almost a decade for that to happen from the time
amount of numbers.
And that's a very short time for a program of R&D and things like that to take place with something ladies and gentlemen, your average calculator has about your average scientific calculator has 3 times more memory and power than the computers that took them into the moon.
Jeez.
That's amazing.
Absolutely.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the engineering behind it alone was amazing.
Just to know that, man, that's insane.
Yeah. We had computers the size of rooms that had barely a megabyte of space.
I think the guidance computer that took that guided the command module and the lunar module, I think it held 40 kilobytes of memory.
Yep. Yes, it did.
It was something like that.
Yeah, and it's something absolutely ridiculous. I can't even. Maybe a half-page Word doc is that big. You know what I mean?
Right.
I design websites, and I got pages of web code that are more than that.
Right.
And it just the concept of bringing that many people together in that kind of gargantuan effort. And the infrastructure and logistics that it takes to get it done. Zach, have y'all had a chance to talk with anybody on that side of it, on the organizational side? I guess the people who kind of found the subcontractors, that kind of stuff.
Sure, I've talked with several NASA employees and management, and it's just pretty amazing that, the movie is not a political statement by any means, but I think one of the things that it's important to recognize is that you had a figure like Kennedy getting out there in front of the American people and saying, hey, we're going to do this.
Yeah.
And obviously it's a calculated decision. I mean, he's a smart politician. He wouldn't have done it if he didn't have good advisors backing it up.
Absolutely.
But the ability to then execute on that level, I think that's really the amazing story behind Project Apollo. It's the execution, it's the organization, it's the day after the speech, and taking starting at that moment and going through to the moon landing in July of 1969. I mean, that's the amazing story in my opinion.
Yeah,
because of how we just got to work and figured out a way to make it happen, the organizational levels, the systems that were developed.
Absolutely.
I mean, it was such a large scale initiative on so many levels, and you had, it's funny when you ask a lot of these individuals, well, what was the motivation that kind of kept you going? The reality is that none of them wanted to be the team that created the slip in the schedule. So
yeah.
And it makes a lot of sense too, right? If you've got tens of thousands of people working on developing the Saturn V moon rocket or the Apollo command module, you don't want to be the team that says, sorry guys, we had a delay. How much is that going to put us back?
I see it all the time in the job that I do. I mean, I did rock and roll for years and years, and it's kind of geeky for me to go to rock and roll shows because half the time I'm not actually watching the show, I'm watching the tech. And I'm appreciating what it took to design that from the beginning, knowing people that are projection mappists, and knowing people that are lighting designers, and what it takes to fly the rig to the ceiling and all the infrastructure to bring 25 trucks of stuff and put it in the air within 3 hours.
Right. That's great.
And then take it down in 2.5, and put it all back in trucks. The logistics behind it is like a symphony. And it's but it is one of those things that when one thing gets delayed, it's a domino effect. Sure. Your 10-minute delay becomes a 20-minute delay to the other people. And it becomes
it compounds.
Yeah, exactly. And you were going to say something just a minute ago when Zach was speaking, Giovanna. It sounded like.
Well, just no. I'm thinking sort of a little bit backwards in terms of when you look at, for instance, where we're at, right, with global storytelling, and you have all these big heroic films coming out that are epic.
Yeah,
they're all going back to the source. Star Wars, going back to the source. So think of this documentary of stripping back all of these layers and really bringing the story. For instance, having these conversations, just doing our due diligence and speaking to some of the folks in Huntsville, in Florida, in Houston. There are real people behind them, and people, everyday folks who got up in the morning very early, who contributed to a team of people. And it's what's interesting is that it goes far beyond just the technological, the infrastructure. It's the humanity, the passion, the love, the opportunities that they were being given. One of the stories that I'd like to share, and Zach, I think, and John, we heard from a gentleman named Reagan Grimsley from Alabama. And he actually shares how back when these initiatives started with the Apollo missions, there weren't that many opportunities for people in engineering. And there was a particular person, I think someone from the Midwest, who was looking for a job, and he wasn't having any luck at all finding something. But here came the Apollo era, and the opportunity started to really, be afforded to all of the folks that had, these skill sets that weren't maybe available. So I think in terms of the documentary, what's really exciting to me is the human stories behind the technological aspect, and more of like the source. When you look at these big films like Star Wars, you're stripping it back to, for instance, how did the work affect the personal relationships? And there's a lot of humanity and personal stories that are funny, relatable also to what was going on at the time with, other stuff like civil rights and segregation and all of that.
Yeah,
and
all
how,
of that's happening,
right. So I think, that's what we're so excited about, that we're looking beyond the advancement into the human aspect of the stories, and they're wonderful.
Well,
so we're excited to bring them to you.
Well, and absolutely, and that's what's been said so many times, is that it's not America that went to the moon; the world went to the moon.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was something that was done for all of mankind. It was something that it wasn't just. Sure, it was definitely done. Like I said earlier, as a little flex of muscle in the Cold War,
right? Yeah,
because we got beat out by Sputnik and all that, and then we got beat out by the first lap around the Earth. Then we got beat out by the first spacewalk. So
it's like when we
weren't exactly the first in a lot of that area, but we were like, by gummit, tell you what, then. Well, we'll just, how about we just go to the moon? Yeah. How about that? So take that, Russia.
It was an achievement for all of mankind.
But it was an achievement for everybody, because it was us stepping into a new realm. And
I bet you if you get down looking at all these stories too, there was all different type of nationalities that helped out, I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, well,
Go ahead.
It's funny you say that, because we, just in this Kickstarter campaign that we've been running, one of the things that has started to pop up on our radar screen that, to be honest, probably, just overlooked because we've been so focused on trying to collect stories here, was that international effort.
Absolutely.
And, in particular, a lot of Australians have been reaching out saying, don't forget the people in Australia
heard the news first.
They were the ones who actually gave the world the broadcast of Neil Armstrong walking on the moon, because of the way the Earth was pointed at that point in time. We needed a tracking station in Australia to broadcast the signal. Yeah. So, so many things.
That's what I said. They got the news first. They heard it before anybody else.
Amazing. That's amazing.
And it's interesting also, just to jump in for a sec, that we've actually been approached by two different companies in France who are interested in helping distribute the film when it's finished in some way,
fantastic.
because they immediately, as soon as they heard about the premise of it, were interested in it. And it, that speaks to the international element of it as well.
Well, because it is one of the most fascinating stories. Like, since there's a reason why there have been so many movies based around the space program. And, Giovanna mentioned it earlier, the humanity, the stories behind it, and the human stories. I guarantee you, if you talk to any NASA engineer today, it's the fact that it was the Apollo program, Star Wars, and Star Trek. And like even all of our technology that we use today, flip phones, like they came out and said straight, like, yeah, we wanted it to look like a communicator. Like so much technology and everything. Hell, Velcro came out of it. Well, at least the mass production of it. It was invented by a Scottish guy, but like they took it to another level. And I have Velcro everywhere. I have Velcro everywhere.
I'm a big fan of Velcro.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of the best storage mediums ever, and it's one of those like, hey, if it's good enough for NASA, it's good enough for me.
Right? Hell yeah, on that.
One of the things that you mentioned is this global appeal. I mean, and just taking it back home, that I didn't know when, for instance, I'll share, when I shared with my family that I'm working on this story, and my family is in South America, and my cousin's like, oh my God, you didn't know, but I was named after Buzz Aldrin. His name is Edwin. I never knew that. So
Edwin Buzz Aldrin.
Wow. What the Apollo missions and landing on the moon was, as you said, far beyond just America or the States. It was really global, and people, I think, are looking for those stories to connect with, something like that.
Yeah. Oh no, most definitely. And I mean, Stephen brought it up earlier, especially people of other nationalities. John was bringing it up. It was right in the middle of the civil rights era. Right. It was a unifying field and a unifying force that everybody was behind. And there was even the movie recently about the lady that wrote the code for the Apollo lander, right? Who was African American.
The Hidden Figures.
The Hidden Figures, exactly. And that's the idea, is all the people that, like, good God, there are people who wrote lines of code for that stuff. Mm-hmm. There are people who designed O-rings. It's just far and beyond the number of moving parts. Yeah. And not just that, but the engineering itself. Like, I know, like I said, I'm a geek with this stuff, but like the tolerances on the space shuttle alone are like within the thousands. Like if something goes wrong to like 1,000th of a degree, it's just decimated. Right. And to know that like in the early days, especially after the Mercury accidents, things like that, that these dudes were literally riding on a bomb. That's all a rocket is a directed bomb. You've taken the explosion and you've said, you now have an outpour.
Hey, Chris, I may have lost you. Am I still on?
Yes.
Hello?
We can hear you.
Yes, we hear you.
Are you there?
Are you guys there?
I hear you.
Yes.
I'm here.
Chris, can you hear us?
Yes, we can.
We can. We can hear you.
Can you hear us?
Houston, I think there's a problem.
I think there is a problem. Hello? Are you there now?
All right.
Can hear you now, yeah. Houston, we have a problem.
Can you hear us? Oh, no.
Sorry, Chris. I think we might have missed that last question.
We're here, guys.
Are we here? Hello?
Can you hear us, guys? We can hear you loud and clear. We can hear you guys.
Oh, God.
Can you hear us?
Hello? No.
A moment ago.
Hello?
Hey, Zach and Giovanni, let's try and see if we're on mute when we're not talking, if that makes a difference.
No. Are you there?
Oh, God.
Hello?
There
yes,
we go.
Can hear you now.
All right.
There we go.
We can hear you now.
Well, can you still hear me?
Still there, guys?
You're fading.
We got you guys. Hang on, guys. Hang on.
We're on the dark side of the moon.
Exactly. Hang on, guys.
If only we had that Australian tracking station to help us.
Are you there?
Are you guys there?
Can you hear us?
Yes.
Fantastic. Okay.
Yes.
So sorry about that.
Houston did have a minor hiccup.
Yeah. Thanks to the Aussies, we are back on the air, folks. Sorry about that technical difficulty.
It wouldn't be right to not have that.
That is the issue with the live show, and I'd love to edit that out, but that was kind of classy because the whole time we could hear y'all. Like, we could hear every word y'all were saying, and that was fantastic. Y'all carried that very, very well.
Oh, good.
So thank you.
Like true astronauts, they didn't hang up.
That's right. Now,
if we go out again, then we'll just take over the show. And
that's it.
That's how you do it.
That sounds good. I'll mute my microphone and let you go. So, when we last left you, we were talking about the amazing stories from people. Zach, what has probably been the most personal story that you've found so far in the effort of making this movie?
Oh, that's a tough question. There've been so many stories that have touched me personally for one reason or another. I was interviewing a gentleman down in Florida in May. And I asked him what I thought was a pretty, benign, softballish kind of question about one of the Apollo missions. It was actually the first mission that took us out towards the moon, and around Christmas time in 1968, the first time that any human beings had ever left the Earth's orbit and ventured out into deep space.
Yeah.
And I asked the gentleman who was an engineer for NASA if he remembered that mission, and his eyes started to tear up. And I thought, oh, well, this is obviously I've struck a nerve here.
Yeah.
And he went into a conversation about how in that wonderful moment, feeling a sense of accomplishment that he had helped to send this crew off to explore the moon for the first time, he had gotten a message that his father passed away. And,
oh, wow.
And then he went into a story about how his father was an iron worker from Ohio, and how he had actually, his son, this gentleman Larry, had tried to get his father a job working to build some of the infrastructure at the Kennedy Space Center in the mid-'60s. And for a time, his dad actually was able to contribute, but unfortunately he had a heart condition, and he didn't last with the job too long. But, to kind of echo Giovanna's point, I think what that interview showed me is that, it showed me that I think what we're trying to do is right on, in the sense that, you look at these amazing accomplishments in our past, the Apollo space program, walking on the moon, and sometimes it's really hard to relate to those stories, because it just seems like such a big operation, and in some ways kind of impersonal, and the people you do hear from are so accomplished, these astronauts.
And it's such a fantastical concept to begin with.
Right.
It is the most elite club in the world.
Right. But the flip side to that is that it's hard to relate to these people. It's hard for everyday folk to make a connection to John Glenn or Buzz Aldrin and say, wow, I know exactly what that guy's talking about.
Yeah.
But when you hear a story like that, you realize that we wouldn't have gone to the moon without these people, without these everyday people that just decided to believe in the idea that we could do this amazing thing.
Yeah.
And, and brick by brick, made it happen over the course of a decade. And it's actually become one of our mantras in our project, trying to build a momentum for an idea. You just have to do it brick by brick.
Yeah.
And eventually you kind of hit that point, hopefully, where, there's enough critical mass where you start that chain reaction and people say, oh, I get it. I get what you're trying to do. Sign me up.
Yeah. And I mean, that couldn't go ahead. I'm sorry. Were you going to say something there?
No.
Okay. I'm sorry. To me, that's the exact point is, trying to show people. I mean, quite honestly, I don't know why there isn't like more museums, things like that about it in local places, even like Huntsville, stuff like that. You know, because even now they're a huge part of NASA. Like they do. That's where Space Camp is. All kinds of stuff. But
I think a part of that is funding. You know, that NASA is a government agency, and they obviously don't have the funding that would make every single initiative of theirs possible. But I think it also has to come from us. I think that's another reason why we're so excited to do this, is because we don't want to lose touch with that history, and the more time that goes by, the fainter and fainter the memory becomes. We want to try to preserve as much of this as possible, and if we can do our share, we're a small operation, we're a small team, but we're a very passionate team. If we can do our part, to try to collect some of that history before it's gone and share it with other people, then that's what we're going to try to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think we really are trying to accomplish two big goals. And Zach, just mentioned one of them, which is really preserving this history, as much of it as we can, that hasn't been heard before, that will be gone soon. But the other one is really reaching new audiences and younger generations, and really, much more than a nostalgic history piece. This film will be extremely valuable simply for its history, but we're hoping it will be much more than that. Back to your earlier point, Chris, I think, people, it's not so fantastic these days, the idea of going to the moon, and probably every generation has noticed the difference where, the young people around them feel that technological advances or other things are just normal, and they're not impressed by it necessarily.
Yeah.
Whereas
I mean, good God,
people who were around when that thing happened, understands what an incredible achievement that was. And so part of what we want to do is really say, is remember this program, remember the people, remember what it was like, but also as a way of saying, doing big things really matters. Yeah. And it's important, and it brings out the best in us individually and collectively. And what are the ways that we're doing that today? That's not necessarily, I don't know how far into that question the film will go, but an implication is, where is that spirit of Apollo, the spirit of tackling something enormous? Where is it today, and what does it mean for tomorrow? And we're really hoping that will resonate with people who were definitely not around for the Apollo achievement.
Yeah, and that's something that we talk so much about on this show, is the concept of where is our spirit as a country anymore? Exactly. Where is our effort to be unified? At one point we had efforts, and for some reason it just became war. But at one point we had efforts that unified us as a country, and that made us something better than what we were individually. And I think
and we had the ability to talk about it too, I think, is the thing. We had the ability to sit down and say, well, I may not agree with you and you may not agree with me.
Hey, hello.
My God, the mantra of dudes and beer.
Yeah, that's our
literally
mantra.
That was the founding. That was the founding of this show, man.
Yep.
Because I'm a student of history. I'm a student of philosophy, and the people that founded our country were amazing modern philosophers, some of the best that there were. And the concept of less than like a fifth of the population of our country took place in the Revolutionary War, yet still we beat the biggest standing army at the time, is phenomenal. That's another one of those gargantuan efforts, kind of like Apollo. But it was born of people who sat around in the pub and they talked religion, they talked politics, they talked economics.
Be talking about
they talked
according to today.
The things that you don't talk about anymore. Like I remember my grandparents sitting around the table and talking politics at dinner while we were at the kids' table. Like, that's what you
Right.
did. And it was okay if we
you
disagreed.
didn't have people blowing up about it.
Yeah, like,
absolutely.
we're still family. It's okay.
Yeah,
you know,
right.
like, and we are definitely not at that point anymore.
If there's a way that our film can help to kind of bridge that gap too, then, you know, that's just icing on the cake for us, and, you know, and hopefully the people that watch it. I think one of the things to keep in mind too is that, you know, it's interesting, you know, 50 years down the road, sometimes you allow the rose-colored glasses to go on, and you think, well, you know, the country was unified. We did this. We went all the way.
Oh, there were horrible things going on with civil rights all over the place.
We had
Riots.
exactly. We had plenty of problems. We had the civil rights movement. We had Vietnam.
It was a hell of a
there
time.
was so much division. You know, I sometimes I'll have conversations with my folks, you know, even today, and I'll say, you know, is 2016, 2017 worse or better than the late 60s? And it's amazing. My dad still says that 1968 was the worst year that you know, in the history of our country. That so many things were going wrong at that point in time, between the Vietnam War and the assassination
all over the country. Everything.
We lost Martin Luther King. We lost Bobby Kennedy. I mean, the country was tearing itself apart. But the point I'm trying to make is that with all this stuff going on, you know, there was I think, you know, and I didn't live through it, so I'm sure there will be people who disagree with me. But I do think that there was a plurality of Americans, probably a majority of Americans, who still felt that they could have conversations with each other about their differences.
Yes.
Talk about what it was that they didn't agree with, you know, and still respect each other's opinions enough to, you know, not to just throw blind insults and quick gotchas at each other.
Right.
Yeah. You know, and if we can try to, you know, remind people of the fact that we're better off when we do that through this film as well, then hey, that would be wonderful.
That's just it. It's supposed to be a world of open discussion. It's supposed to be a world of open minds. And whenever you come in with a closed paradigm, or a paradigm that's formed to begin with, you're gonna have issues. I mean, that was my great grandmother's issue, for Christ's sake. I mean, good God, she went around in a horse and carriage, man. She picked cotton. Yep. You know what I mean? Like, no, we didn't go to the moon.
My grandmother
we can't go to the moon. There is no way we can go to the moon. The moon's way up there. We can't do that. That's a movie. You know, like, and in her paradigm, like, because that's just the paradigm she lived in. It couldn't happen. Like, there was no way it could possibly happen. You know, and so many people, I think, are not ready for that paradigm shift, are not ready for that moment of selflessness that it took for these people to work 70-hour weeks for years on end.
Yeah.
To like you said, be the person that wasn't the slack, you know? To be the department, and it's that way in NASA today. Like, if you look at the programs, they compete against each other. They're always competing for benchmark, everything else. Even amongst the shared programs, they're always trying to beat each other out on schedule as to who can get their job done better and faster. You know, and that is what it takes. You know, have you ever had that situation with this goes to any of y'all, with the collaboration in working in film, either as a director or a producer?
Giovanna, you want to field that one?
Could you ask the question again? To see if I understood?
Have you ever had that situation where it is that effort between a whole bunch of people that actually actively makes it happen? I mean, I have it happen all the time where it's a bunch of people that ain't cooperating that make it not happen.
Make it not.
That's you know what? make it or not happen. Well, you know what? Just to bring it back a little bit, and I'll bring it back to filmmaking, why I just love storytelling. The thing with this film, and I think, you know, in talking to different people in the interviews that we're doing, preliminary interviews, there was still a certain element of competition between the different regions, Huntsville versus Houston and Florida and whatnot. But the commonality around this is really what we talk about, is the spirit of Apollo, which gets behind, the differences, and perhaps applying it to how Zach alluded to and John has been saying, is bring it now to 2018, 2019, when we release the film, and how the commonalities at the end is about the dream, coming together behind the mission, despite the differences or the competitions and the issues that might have arisen. Because at the end of the day, it's really about collaboration and believing in something that's bigger than you, but you can't do it yourself. So I think, like, for me as a filmmaker, I learn on every project, and hopefully I learn to also be a better storyteller, but I really learn from the team. And sometimes it is, each project has its own different methodology, mission, if you will. It could be difficult. Each film has its own unique set of challenges and strengths. And at the end of the day, I think for independent filmmakers like us, it's usually the funding aspect that has one of those trying moments where we're doing a lot of grant writing, and it's getting the right team involved. The creative ideas, I think, are there when you're behind a wonderful project like this one. And for me, it's really, I've learned. I think we learn from mistakes as well. Sometimes we might partner up with the wrong person. Not necessarily that they're difficult to work with. It might just be the wrong type of project that you're working on.
Yeah, maybe the wrong time.
Yeah. Maybe the wrong time. And then, but I think we ultimately learn. And in the independent film community, I think because we have to wear so many different hats, you have to be extremely resourceful. And, like, for example, John, who is just, I'm always in awe and I'm always learning from him because, growing up in the East Coast in New York, we're a lot more less patient. And I think,
a little bit.
On this particular film, I think that, it's a learning experience in what we're doing with the stories, and then how resourceful we can be with what we have. So,
go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, Chris, you touched on, the other big reason that I wanted to be part of this project, in addition to just feeling immediate affinity with both Zach and Giovanna and really enjoying working with them, which, is a big percentage of job satisfaction. But another big motivator is because the power of film and storytelling, it communicates with our brains in a different way than intellectual discourse. I could tell you, position X, and just by telling you verbally or writing it down and you're reading it in a blog or a newspaper or a commentary or something, you either agree with me or you don't, and but you're in an evaluative and defensive posture immediately because I'm engaging you in ideas at the intellectual level. But filmmaking is so much different. It interacts with, images and sound and emotion and facial expression.
It doesn't allow the filter of cognitive dissonance to get in the way.
Absolutely. It interacts with our brains in a very different way. And I'm the lightest unexperienced in filmmaking of the three of us. Prior to filmmaking, my bulk of my career is in conflict resolution. And,
oh my God! I was just about to say, you look at films psychologically like I do.
Yeah.
There you go.
And you're a mediator. There you have it.
I've been privileged in my life to be able to have experiences in other cultures and meet other people and really just discover that, on the other side of some kind of difference or disagreement, it's really the same stuff.
Yes.
And the things that we, that stop us and trip us up and make things unproductive, the vast majority of which is really unnecessary. Sometimes there's real, actual zero-sum disagreements, but that's really very rare.
Yeah.
Most of the arguments and the problems that we have are just a matter of not understanding each other well enough.
Yeah, they're prima facie issues.
The whole reason, and so the whole reason that I'm even in this line of work is because the power of film and storytelling can be effective when other forms of communication aren't. And the Apollo story is so great because it's universal. It kind of reminds us how small we are in the cosmos,
absolutely.
but how great we are when we work together and put our minds towards doing something really incredible. And I think that is a message that transcends, whatever your political views are, or your views on history, or anything like that. And so that's why it just is such an exciting project for me personally.
Well, and I've got a question for you, John, that I'd like Giovanna to follow up with, as well as Zach. What is it that drew you to making film? I mean, you've talked about the way that it affects people's thinking, the way that it can affect paradigms without crossing the threshold of cognitive dissonance. But what was it that made you decide that you wanted to be a filmmaker? Because there was a definite moment in my life where I defined myself as an engineer. That's what I did. When was the moment that you let both feet into the water and decided, I'm going to make films, and why did you do it?
Well, to be fully honest, I still don't consider myself primarily a filmmaker. I have jumped in with both feet.
Okay. That's fair.
I feel that.
My wife would attest to the financial vulnerability of jumping into independent filmmaking after leaving a cushy full-time job with benefits.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm definitely into it.
I'm an independent contractor, so I can tell you it's right.
Exactly, but my primary identity is for.
Well, and that's just it. And I've tried to explain. I have another podcast called Talking Sound that's all about this industry, filmmaking, live audio, video, every studio work. And there's a difference between your job and what you are.
And your vocation.
And your vocation, what you're called to. And a job is what you do 9 to 5. I was an audio engineer 5 nights a week at a club while I had a full-time job. And the day that somebody asked me, what do you do? I was like, oh, I'm an audio engineer, but I work at IDEX during the day. That was my moment where it was like, oh my God, I'm not my job, man.
Yeah. Don't tell them that.
Right.
This is what I am. Yeah. This is what I'm supposed to be doing with my life. And everything changed. Go ahead.
Absolutely. I was just going to say, one of my favorite professors, an amazing man and mediator, John Paul Lederach, pointed out that the literal root of the word vocation comes from voice, and what is that voice that calls you to do something that you hear from inside you. And that has really, in answer to your question, that has really been what has guided me in my career and led to this point. Whether you call it, whether I'm in the filmmaking box or I'm in the, I not long ago I was full into policy work in Washington. Before that, a relief worker all over the world. I don't know what box applies, but I know that the vocation, the voice that I hear, is about knowing and having seen and experienced that there is so much more that unites us than divides us. We just get it mixed up.
Right.
And so if there are creative ways that we can act and interact in a way that messes us up less, then I want to be part of efforts to make that happen. And so that I want to hear what Giovanna had to say, and Zach too, and answer that question. But that's how I got here.
Fantastic. Giovanna?
I love your story, John. Oh, God.
Me too.
Okay, so...
Not to put you on the spot, but you're kind of on the spot now.
No, not to put you on the spot. No. This is actually... I've been thinking a lot about this these past few years, and if I can go back, I've always grown up with I've loved films. I've grown up watching films. I was a very shy kid. But I think my moment, and I didn't even realize it back then, was when I was painting. And painting for me I still do a lot of oil on canvas.
Oh, wow.
And for me, it was, what you say, picture's worth 1,000 words. Well, when you paint, you kind of get yourself into, at least I do, into your own canvas. And what is interesting is I didn't see this connection until lately, but you're working with texture, you're working with color, composition and different layers, and somehow you are telling a story through doing that. Fast forward, I'm in my I'm in my mid 40s.
Okay.
What really, that voice that John was talking about, I have been listening to it. My journey has been long and winding. I actually went into interior design school very quickly, then decided I did not want that. And I had gotten in through a portfolio. Long story short, I went into Wall Street and I was miserable. And 2002, I'll tell you, around spring, May 2002, I made the jump and I decided, I heard the voice, if you will, that I wanted to go back to something creative and stories. And then I jumped in and left finance and have been working on, this path, which to me is, it's more than, to me, really, it's my oxygen.
Yeah.
I think there's nothing more wonderful than telling stories, but one thing is the actual concept, and then the behind the scenes is another layer to it of texture where you're meeting and you're becoming family, like with John and Zach, and there are other stories there, and then you work really closely, whether you're on, I've worked on narrative films as well, and it's just amazing. There's nothing to me more profound when you have the right team and you start with this little idea that starts in your head and it comes into intangible paper. Then you're working with a team, putting it all together, and so that's my story. It started with paint.
Well, and as a musician, it's the concept of synergy. As an audio engineer, whenever I worked with bands, I only worked with bands that I got, because when I was behind the board, I could literally feel the synergy on stage. I could feel the unspoken motions between people, and it translated to me behind the board, and it just came out through the speakers. It was great stuff. But it is truly learning to tap into that vibe and learning to understand the little tug behind your belly button that's like, wait a minute. And it's funny, your story, Giovanna, because I have a very good friend, Mike Davis, who's been on the show numerous times, who is a double major in biology and drama and is a trader by trade.
Trader by trade.
He's an investment banker. And it's like, wow, you did nothing at all with either one of those things. But you actually followed with all that.
Has a tendency to happen.
Yeah, and it was like, wow, that's just out of left field, brother. But he loves it, and he does it, and he's passionate about it. Yeah. And that's where the tug pulled.
That passion is usually self-rewarding, when you follow that voice, that tells you what you love to do, I think, Well, you're doing what you love to do, and inside it, the self-rewarding part.
Well, and you hear me say it all the time. I don't work. I do hard jobs. You've been with me on shows.
But you're doing what you love.
There's not a day that I work, whether it's building websites, whether it's modifying guitar pedals, whether it's building circuits, or, doing a live show.
And doing something that you love to do.
I get paid to play with people's expensive toys. That is not a job, dude.
That's the dream.
It's fantastic, but
it's what Joseph Campbell said. Follow your bliss.
That's it, exactly, and it's follow that voice. Right. Learn to tap into that. And Zach, I want to hear your story. What was it that? Because I know many directors, I know many DOPs as well, directors of photography, stuff like that, and they all have such an interesting story as to why they got into that palette of the industry.
Right.
What was it that drew you to directing? And what was it that drew you to filmmaking and storytelling?
Sadomasochism.
Okay.
Oh, that's a good one.
All right. You're like me. You're a self-abuser. You like 80 hours a week doing what you love, whether you sleep or not.
I saw that coming.
You got it. No, there is a little bit of a component of that. You're sometimes when the going gets tough, you ask yourself, why am I doing this repeatedly to myself and my family and my friends and whatnot? But no, for me, I think in some ways always knew I wanted to do this. When I was a little kid, I always, I just loved playing with my dad's camcorder and, shooting stuff when he would let me, and sometimes, frankly, when, he wasn't looking, and I would take it out of the closet and use it without his permission. And that just kind of evolved. I started to, during summer vacation, I was off from school. We got a camera here. I've got 2 sisters and a group of friends. Let's make a movie. Yeah. And that would, year after year, the ideas got a little bit more ambitious and a little bit more sophisticated.
One of the movies was Apollo 13.
One of the
oh, dang.
Apollo 13.5.
Yeah, I thought I could do better than Ron Howard.
It's a secret mission.
So you bet.
I think that was called the Voyagers, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh yeah.
It was a piece of crap, but it was a good effort. I don't know, and it's kind of organic, right? It keeps on evolving. Yeah. I went to college and I majored in history, but it was always there, and I was always doing it on the side. And I think at one point after, when I was close to graduating, I thought, well, maybe I could try to translate this into the real world and see what happens. So I took a job, and my first job out of college, I worked for a production company in New York, and then I worked for a television company doing factual stuff. And,
sure.
But like Giovanna, my road is a little circuitous. It's not a linear path to filmmaking. I wasn't sure that I wanted to be a filmmaker. I wasn't sure that the profession was for me. So I bailed out. I went back to school. I went to law school for 3 years.
Oh, wow.
Whoa. That's a big bailout.
It was a huge bailout,
but very useful now that you're in film.
Yeah. Useful, and I can't repudiate it completely, because that's where I met my wife.
Right?
So,
and I had the same situation.
I had to go to law school to meet my wife.
I left my college in Dallas, I guess after my sophomore year, and then came back a year later and ended up meeting my wife. And then we ended up, much like you, Zach, and Giovanna, meeting on Twitter. We found each other whenever I moved home from Maine. I was just looking people up and found her on Facebook. Right. And I was like, oh, I remember Amy. And we became friends. And now we're married.
And that college you were going for isn't quite...
Yeah, like had I never gone back to UD and met her? And it's interesting because even my story is, like you said, circuitous, and we don't always start off on our path. And it's so funny to me, the concept even of like when you leave high school of having a path. I know quite a few people that follow their path and they do their path and they're great. And they're normally very focused career paths where they're doctors or lawyers or teachers, things like that, or biologists, but I started off as a seminary student and ended up being a youth minister for many, many years, and then took an internship I was taking a few classes for audio engineering and making my own music, and my teacher heard some stuff that I'd turned in for arrangement and composition and was like, listen, man, you need to leave.
You need to leave.
You need to go like this is a who you know and what you know industry, and you need to go wrap cables and mop up a puke somewhere or something, but you just need to get your hands dirty and get up in it. You've already got that. You've already got the skills. You just need to go out and get your hands dirty. So I went out and took internships and ended up with an internship at a video house and learned to edit video and all kinds of stuff. And now I'm in this industry, which lo and behold, had somebody told me I'd be doing what I was doing in high school theater, right? Running tech for a living. Would I have gone to the seminary? Would I have gone to that? Because that's what made me go to that college. That was the first real test. It was like, well, great, welcome. This is where you're going to school.
Yep. Yeah.
So,
but your journey is what makes you who you are.
Exactly.
You know, that's the thing.
Right. Exactly.
True.
And you've really got to.
We can't.
Go ahead.
We can't separate the two because, I don't want to get all gushy here.
No,
but,
go ahead, get it.
If I hadn't been on the path, if we hadn't all been on the path, then, we wouldn't have all gotten together and, we wouldn't be trying to make this project now. And,
exactly.
So it's amazing sometimes. And I think to John's point, and I think Giovanna has been talking about it too throughout, that's really what's so, universal about storytelling is that we all have a story, right?
Yeah.
And for as long as human beings have been on this planet, we've just been captivated by the process of sharing these stories, of sharing life experiences, sitting around a fire.
Exactly.
As cave people, and
yep.
Trying to explain our experiences to each other and whatever medium we could, use at the time. I mean, look at those cave paintings that go back 30,000 years, in France, and you see those drawings on the wall, and you go, well, that's just movie making. That it's just sharing a life experience and making a connection with another person.
No,
and that's just that's an amazing. That's what makes us, I think, just wonderful creatures, and that's what all of this is about. It's just about trying to remember and preserve that aspect of our humanity.
Well, and I can't find that more important of a point to make. Go ahead, Giovanna.
Oh, you hear me? Oh, okay. No, what I was going to say, and what Zach is saying, and John, and I think we're all there, is that for some of us, like for me, it's been such a long-winded road to get back to the point that I should have been on, but I didn't know. So I think when we share these stories, and your listeners or anyone really hears, like they can identify with the fact that for some of us, it's not so linear. And hey, and it's okay.
Yeah.
Ultimately, listen to your voice, and it's okay. Life will happen, right. And just trust your instincts and try to surround yourself with great people.
That's right.
Stories where connect, I think, in the immensity of the efforts that might be, for instance, with Apollo and the Apollo era. But at the end of the day, we all are the same, no matter what we look like, no matter where we come from, apolitical, meaning we are people. So if we look to the story and the commonalities and the universality of the themes, that's really what will connect us and the feeling, So at least for me, that's what has gotten me so empowered as well as a storyteller, working with Zach, hearing your stories too. This is exciting because that's how we connect. So, and the fact that we're not so perfect, even though that certain things might seem perfect, but behind that, they're real people driving a dream.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's just it. There's a Rush song that talks about that. I'm such a Rush freak. But Zach, I'd like to ask you a question because you said you were getting deep a second ago.
Yeah.
I'm going to get real deep with you.
Yeah.
How often, as a director, do you feel the concept of the platonic cave? You know what I mean? The shadows on the wall and the reality outside. How often do you feel like you're playing that didactic as a director, as a filmmaker? Like where you're projecting, where there's a reality. Do you know of the concept of the cave by Plato?
I read it a while ago. You have to refresh my memory though, Chris.
Well, it's the concept of everybody is down in a cave, and the only light they know is the shadow on the wall and the puppetry being played. But outside of that cave is a beautiful, wonderful world.
Right. Go ahead, John.
I was just going to say, and part of our job, I think part of your question, Chris, is, to what extent, Zach, is your job helping people discover more of that reality rather than just the dancing shadows.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. How much are you shedding trying to shed the light of truth as opposed to showing the dancing shadows on the wall?
And I'm glad you're going deep, Chris. I don't know if this is a Deep Thoughts episode or not, but I'm glad
have you been tuning in? Do you know that we have Thinking Deeply with Dudes and Beer?
That's what we're all about. We love deep.
And that reminds me too. We should check which beer we're supposed to be on. I've had one, but I can open another one.
That's okay. I'm on 4.
I've been drinking wine, so I don't know.
Oh, hey, absolutely. It is an equal volume. One beer equals 1 8-ounce glass of wine equals 1 shot of 90 proof liquor.
I'm not even going to say how many.
That's bar math. So you can enjoy a mixed drink. We got a full bar over here on the side. You can do whatever you want.
Great.
I'm on number 4 myself, but
I think I'm around there, maybe.
Got to go and visit Austin. That's got to write that.
Absolutely, and most definitely. Like you guys need to submit to Austin Film Festival. I have connections with people, all that kind of stuff. So actually, I can hook you up with some folks.
Yep.
I got to do a quick shout out. Just speaking of Austin, because I know that the film festival is going on right now. Good friends of mine, Mark and David Dotson, have an amazing film right now, and it is about Apollo.
Nice.
You got to check it out. It's called The Landing. It takes stories or the concept of Apollo, and it's a mystery kind of murder suspense thriller, all kind of done up in a documentary style. I can't say anymore because I don't want to spoil the film, but if you're going to go to the festival, definitely check it out.
Yeah, my wife is actually she's an improv comedian and teaches improv comedy and sketch comedy.
Does. Yeah.
And is out actually. Wow. She's been out all day actually hosting panels. She's hosting panels for Austin Film Festival this week. Right. So I'm very, very proud of her. Mm-hmm. And her podcast, Yes, But Why.
Oh, that's great.
But, it is one of those, to me, like you were saying, John, I can't help but get deep in life. Because I see it all around me. Everywhere I look is depth. I was trained to think that way.
It's like when you see something, it's like question, well, how's it tick or why is it tick? Kind of.
Yeah. It is
not just seeing it as.
It is the how and the why, layer, and not the skin layer. As we said earlier, the prima facie, just the facade of what you see.
Yeah, the shadow.
And that's the concept of the concept of the cave is the shadow. And I think so many times these movies that come out about NASA and everything else are so much the shadow and not the light. I mean,
you make a really good point.
Even one of the greatest ones that was ever made, The Right Stuff,
right,
was so much more the shadow than the light.
The right stuff.
Go ahead.
No, you're so right about that, and it's really hard because you're juggling as a storyteller, right? You've got your desire to be truthful and accurate, especially if you're doing documentary or a historical piece like The Right Stuff or Hidden Figures or Apollo 13 or something like that.
I think Hidden Figures was a lot more dead on the history than Right Stuff was, but.
Yeah, no, you're right, but you're juggling. You have to think about your audience and how they're going to process it, and how you can connect what it is that you're trying to say or share, and make sure that it resonates with with that audience. I think to your point about The Right Stuff, it's a great film. And, in my opinion, the book is even better, but it misses the mark if you're looking for accuracy about who these original 7 astronauts actually were.
Yeah.
What their experiences were like on the day to day. It's not as, some of that isn't as sexy as, showing them in slow motion, walking down a hallway in their spacesuits and, playing, the dramatic score in the background. So it's a balancing act. No, I think that's really why I got into documentary filmmaking, to tell you the truth, is I started to kind of feel like I was more interested in making sure that I tried to get the story accurate than try to produce something that I knew an audience was going to respond to. And I'm not going to, trash Hollywood or diss, what they're trying to do. I think that
we do it all the time. I'm sorry. I have friends that act. I have friends that make movies. Shout out to Seymour Films in Nevada. But dude, there is such friggin' lazy writing going on in Hollywood. Like, I'm sorry. How many reboots do we have? I'm an old school horror movie fan, and they have not had an original storyline in like 15 years.
Exactly.
It's horrifying.
It's true, intended. And I think that there's a no. It's true, and I think that there's a lot of stuff going on there, and and unfortunately, is I think what's sad about what's going on today in Hollywood is that everyone is just so afraid about missing the mark and losing a lot of money.
Yeah.
That we're really missing the opportunity to share new original stories that will not only get audiences in the seats excited to go to the movies again,
exactly.
but in my opinion, we'll make them a buck or two. There's only a certain amount of Spider-Man reboots we can do before people say, okay, well, I just can't.
As a Spider-Man fan, I fully agree with you. I am surrounded by Spider-Man in my studio as we speak.
Yeah, he is actually.
Yeah. And I could not agree with you more. They took his spider sense away. What the hell is that?
Yeah,
No. You cannot take away an intrinsic part of a character. It doesn't work that way.
It doesn't have a happy ending, unfortunately.
Yeah,
I just think Hollywood's kind of afraid to take these new chances, to get these new stories out there and stuff like that. Take another way of doing things, not just all about making a buck, but getting the real stuff out, That's what I kind of think.
And I get it. I mean, no one really understands what's going on right now in the industry. Everyone's terrified because since things are going digital, the trajectory is that, all digital things are slowly but surely going to become free, or the expectation is that they should be free. And the studios are terrified. It's they don't know how much longer they can. Go ahead.
I was going to say, and I'd like to hear this as a round table from Zach to John to Giovanna, or actually Zach to Giovanna to John, because I heard Giovanna trying to chime in there. Because I have, like I said, my buddy John Seymour of Seymour Films makes movies, and most of his are digitally produced. They're digitally distributed, stuff like that. As a digital musician, I find the fact that I don't have to have a label, I don't have to have a distributor, I don't have to make CDs, I can sell single tracks. Like, I find the digital realm hugely freeing as a creator.
Right. For the independent artist.
For the independent artist.
Yes.
And not only that, but the distribution of Amazon, Netflix, Hulu, things like that has taken over so much that, I mean, even he's been told, good God, people think that we're the market. We aren't. I'm sorry, but as far as most major films go, you're looking at half the market being China, quite literally.
That's right.
Really? They're looking at building a whole new Hollywood in China just to make movies.
Wow, I didn't know that. Holy cow.
It's wild. And where do y'all weigh in on that? How do you see that affecting you? And are you going to, I would highly advise it, are you going to take advantage of the digital distribution market?
Absolutely. And, it is liberating. I agree with you that, what makes this possible, what makes it possible to work with two other people to produce a feature film and expect to be able to, shoot, edit, and deliver it is digital technology. So it is completely liberating. But I don't think that we really, because we're in the thick of it, we can't see the forest for the trees. We don't really know exactly where it's taking us.
Yeah.
And the uncertainty there is that when you look at, how films and music are being distributed, how it's reaching audiences, where is that, trajectory taking us? There does seem to be an expectation building that
content creation, the digital content creation is not something that people want to pay for. But even the subscription-based models, Netflix and Hulu.
I disagree, though, because I myself have no cable. I have internet. I have a good internet connection because I'm a web designer and stuff like that. And I do a lot of uploading of video and audio. To me, I'm an Amazon Prime user. I use Hulu and I use Netflix. And that is where my entertainment comes from. Other than that, I maybe watch some PBS stuff, everything else. But yeah, like any regular TV, I can catch that on Hulu, man. Like I don't pay for cable. I don't pay for channels that I don't use. Between my regular internet connection and that, I'm paying about $65 a month.
That is the new day age.
There's no question. There's no question that these new distributors, these subscription-based video on demand distributors like Netflix and Hulu and Amazon, they're seeing a lot of success on their new models. I'm just wondering more about, and also, Chris, in full disclosure, we've also cut the cord. We don't have cable anymore.
Good.
I love.
Good. I wish I had an applause cue. I don't.
Oh, it's getting more common. Actually, it's getting more common.
I advise everybody to do it. Stop it. I told my brother to stop doing it. And good God, man, he saves like $100 a month because he lives out in the country on a private road. And in order to have anything, he had to pay for a crazy friggin' package.
After my satellite,
and I'm like, dude, just pay for internet and pay for, like, you've already got Amazon Prime. Pay for Netflix and Hulu and be done with it. Do it all through your Xbox.
I'm just wondering though where it ends up going, and I think that what is becoming a little bit challenging is because of the enormous, let's say, call it supply of films and music that digital technology has opened up. It is harder to for individual artists to make a living doing that.
Sure.
But, I feel like I've talked enough. I'm curious to hear what Giovanna and John think about this stuff.
Giovanna, ring in on that. And what you were going to say before.
No. It was sort of aligned to what we're talking about. I have a lot of friends who are musicians, and some of them, we have these conversations of how they've been affected by the industry and the shift, and the opportunities that have arisen through the digital distribution model. At the same time, for me as a filmmaker, I think that the Hollywood business model is, falling into an archaic situation where we're, in the digital age. We're in the digital age more, and you see it in the demand of theaters. More theaters are being affected, that people are actually watching their films at home studios and whatnot. I think that as twofold. I think technology is really, really great. What I love is that we have big data. I'm always fascinated to see what information, what is driving stories, or what is driving audiences to specific stories.
Yeah, so what the memes of society are right now that are creating these stories on film to begin with.
Right. So I think there is a lot. We're right now sort of readjusting, if you will, to a new business model that is driven by digital content.
Yeah.
At the same time, I do believe the subscription model is going to continue to grow as audiences' tastes become more sophisticated. And as an example, you have the action film people, you have the documentarians who, like us, who like more of the historical aspects of stories. I think there's an opportunity. I think that it also drives on demand of what consumers want.
Yeah.
For me, I'm fascinated with the story, for instance, with Netflix, big data. House of Cards was created around all of that information that they were gathering. So I think that we are in a unique situation that while maybe a target audience might not be in the millions, but there could be content that's specific to, let's say, 500,000 of consistent subscribers who are very fascinated by a niche story. So I think that whereas everything was a catch-all back in the day, now people are gravitating towards specificity of the stories that are being, created or, disseminated. So I think as filmmakers, we have to also adjust and be pragmatic and using the tools around us, not just to tell them, but how we're learning from our own audience to tell better stories that interest them.
Well, absolutely.
That's where I'm at with it.
Yeah, and I mean, absolutely. I remember probably about 1999, I had the dream that one day I would be able to just have a keyboard remote and I could just type in what I wanted to see and it would play. And we're pretty much there.
I was going to say, I think we're there.
We're pretty much there. Like within a decade. Yeah. We're pretty much there. And like at that point in 1999, folks, like you could barely buy stuff online. Like Amazon was books. They didn't own the country, as far as online ordering was going. They were just a bookstore. Like they were Barnes and Noble on the internet. That's pretty much what they were.
Right.
And
crazy?
And I work these big data conventions because it's funny that you bring that up. Because the demographics, everything, like there is so much that comes about, even through social media. I was working a convention today that I'll be working for the next 2 days where they were talking about they use data pings in their restaurant to find out like what cooks you follow. Like if you follow any cooks from Food Network on Twitter and stuff like that. And like they're going to specifically target you on Twitter with stuff. And it's like, whoa, like it's mind blowing and it's mind boggling.
It's just becoming so laser specific that we can plug into these really detailed aspects of our lives.
Yeah. And at the same time, I've worked conferences for Hulu. I've worked conferences for Amazon and things like that, and I'm here to tell you guys they are looking for you folks actively.
Oh yeah,
actively. Yep. Now, John, I'd like you to weigh on this.
Well, I think there's a times so you wanted to get deep, and I'm.
Do it.
And I'm
John's ready to get deep.
Always ready.
I'm one beer deep, so I'm gonna try to zoom out.
Oh, you're about 5 behind.
Hope it's worthwhile. Yeah, I know. I think great. I think humanity and technology and the world is always constantly changing, but I think there are moments when the rate of change is much more rapid.
Yeah,
maybe different kinds of revolutions, industrial revolution. We're in the middle of the internet and digital revolution, and so there are so many things changing so fast. The entertainment industry is kind of far down on the list. Higher up is eradicating poverty and the cultural invasion of cultures that are struggling with change and modernity now that lead to closed societies and terrorism and all kinds of other things. There's big things going on, but where it concerns how we consume stories, how we consume stories, I think one amazing thing that the internet has done, and social media in particular, is that it's so efficient at connecting content creators with exactly the people who want that specific content.
Yeah.
It could be as niche as anything, any topic so esoteric and specific, but there is some audience somewhere who wants to know exactly what you as an individual are most passionate about, and you can get on social media and connect with them immediately. I think an interesting question to ask is, this is obviously catalyzing something. What is it that it's bringing about more quickly? What's going to happen when people create and consume what they want to know about and hear and be entertained by quickly and in greater volume and more efficiently than ever before? What is that bringing about? That's just something I'm wondering as I'm listening to the conversation.
That's a good question.
On mute because here comes the siren.
And I was going to say, is everybody okay? Everybody check in real quick. Let's all make sure we're okay. I'm a safety-oriented guy. I just went into work mode when I heard the sirens. And it was like, okay, who got hurt? Who fell off a ladder?
Sorry about that. I'm in
You're one beer deep and you fell off the ladder?
You are definitely not on the moon right now.
So...
Correct.
You know, to that point, John, to me... it is the fact of collaboration of society and the fact of wanting to collaborate as a society. One of my favorite shows that's come out in the last few years, and ring off if you've seen it, is Hit Record TV.
Huh. Interesting.
Have you seen that?
I'm familiar with it. Yeah, it's really great.
And I will honestly say,
content creation.
As a 41-year-old man, when I watched the first episode of that, I believe it's entitled Stars, I wept. Because it was such a beautiful concept, such an amazing concept that these guys took the time to put together a website where it's like, let's let artists collaborate. Let's, if you have an animation and you want music done to it, hook up with a musician. And then they took all of that and it was like, okay, if you're a songwriter, submit your lyrics and people will sing your song. People will play your song on different instruments. And then they edit it all together and make it like a full song with like 18 people singing the song and all the instruments playing. And it's absolutely amazing. And it's fantastic.
Wow, that's really cool.
On the flip side of that is exactly what my wife and I talk about frequently is our society more connected in that way? And is it the fact that, like you were saying earlier, that 68 was the worst year ever? Is that the fact? Yeah. Or is it the fact that we think things are so bad now because we know what's happening in Poughkeepsie as it happens in Poughkeepsie?
Right.
Used to be you didn't get the Poughkeepsie Register in Dallas, Texas, so you didn't really know what was happening in Poughkeepsie. You know what I mean?
Right.
But nowadays, with the information, with the connectivity and everything else, we are inundated with information, and it's hard to separate. I mean, good God, I started Red Team News website for the fact of separating fact from reality. Because people have lost this concept of looking at life like in a critical manner and thinking about things in a fact-based concept. And I don't know of any teacher I ever had that would let me turn in a research paper with 3 sources. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I remember that.
Where's the opposing point of view? Where's the critical thinking going on here? And that's where you were talking about earlier, John, the difference between telling a story in film and being able to get away from that concept of cognitive dissonance, where somebody is so locked in a paradigm that when you confront them with what may be very well fact, they do one of 3 things. It's either the fight or flight of the brain or the freeze. They either fight the concept, they run away from it, or they just don't know what the hell to do with it. And that's the concept of cognitive dissonance. And we see it all the time with social media and everything else.
Yeah.
But you're so totally correct with and I as a musician, and someone who soundtracks things, find the fact that it's freeing, that I get to express that emotion. I get to put the bounds on that emotion, at least in my
Absolutely.
How it affects somebody, that's the artist's point of view in me. You know, as long as it affected you, like affected, AFF.
Yeah.
Folks, as long as it moved you, I don't care if you liked it or didn't like it.
Right.
Tell me why, and I am fulfilled as an artist.
Yep, absolutely.
We won't know for a long time until we won't know for a while how this all plays out, how this big internet experiment, digital experiment plays out. It's if you ask anyone that was around when it all started to first take shape, I don't think anyone was thinking that, we'd all have our individual soapboxes and, be willing to just shout out, into the void, how we felt at any given moment. Indiscriminately take a picture of ourselves at the grocery store doing some, mundane thing and call it, worthy of public attention. And, I mean, I'm not, I'm not, talking down about that stuff. It's just, we just didn't expect that would be one of the spin-offs of connecting everyone through this kind of global net. And I think that, no, go ahead, Chris.
I was going to say, what's funny is that this global net was first created for things like NASA. Right. So that JPL and other people could share information from data center to data center, from point to point of communication and project. That is where the internet started.
What you're talking about when you say that, you bring up the example of this, website that allows all sorts of wonderful collaboration and,
absolutely.
There are countless other, things like that out there right now, and people, doing wonderful things. That's the best, I think, of what.
Yes,
of what this
that is the beautiful
has to offer.
That's the beautiful part.
What's unfortunate is that the perversion of it has really taken center stage, and we see it on a daily basis with divisive politics and slander and name calling and
doxing,
one-ups and gotchas, and it's just become so toxic.
It's always the negative.
We have a responsibility. I think, we got to get some control over this and figure out, look, this thing isn't going to control itself, and there's certainly going to be plenty of people out there who are going to want to take advantage of it for these purposes. We, as a society, have to say, enough. We don't want to live in a world that's dictated by this type of toxicity. Let's figure out a way to make sure that this great thing that we've created is used for for its wonderful potential, not brings out the best in ourselves, not the worst.
Exactly, exactly. And it, like we were saying earlier, John, getting back to the point of discourse in society, getting back to the point of open-minded discourse, where we're willing to hear the other side of something and accept it and understand that, because I traveled abroad. I lived abroad for 6 months of my life in Rome. And, like when you live somewhere else and come back to America, you really kind of get a different aspect of America and understand why some people feel the way they do about America.
Right.
And
well, I think.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think this is also the changes that we've seen in our discourse is also an effect of the rapid change and revolution that we're a part of. There have always been, my conflict textbooks would say that, in any large society, there are people on either side of an issue. Some are closer to the middle ground, and there are always people that are at the extremes. And it's the only difference is before, we didn't have the technology to hear.
Yeah. We didn't get the Poughkeepsie Register.
Yeah.
The Poughkeepsie Register didn't pop up on Facebook in the morning.
and there is, fortunately or unfortunately, there's something about human nature and our instincts that probably kept us safe from saber-toothed tigers at one point.
Yes.
But that our brains really tune into danger and fear in a way that hope and, positivity, doesn't capture our attention. It may gain our respect more. It may gain, we want to strive to be that. But in the moment, it's the negative, it's the fearful that gains our attention.
Well,
so what happens when you add technology to it? Now we hear the extreme views on either side are much more available, and we're attracted to it because it's because of that fear element.
Yes.
And so now we think or we believe that the edges, the extremes have taken over. But is that really the case, or is it just that we're hearing things differently because of technology.
Well, and I wish that I had an angelic chorus cue right now, because quite literally, I recorded an episode of Thinking Deeply with our former guest Billy Dorsey, who will be a regular guest on Thinking Deeply. But the whole episode is literally about manifestation and the concept of negativity. And the fact of our brain is a negative feedback machine.
Picks up on negative first.
Well, yeah.
Right.
I mean, the first thing, and the prime example is I've been a teacher in my life. You can encourage a kid 10 times. The first time you scold them, you erased 8 of them. They're gone.
Right.
You know? And it's because we are trained biologically and genetically to learn through negative feedback. Fire is hot. Don't touch it. Remember it forever that one time. So when, like you said, John, when negative stories are going on all the time, negative, like my mom used to talk about how she didn't sleep well in Houston. And I'm like, good God, you go to sleep at 10 o'clock and you leave the news going. Like you're listening to like 8 murders that happened in Houston while you're asleep. How do you expect to get good sleep?
Yeah, right.
You know, like your brain is still processing that. Like, and I live in Austin, folks. We don't have 8 murders a night on TV, but they do in Houston.
San Antonio.
But it's a negative. And what's funny is being somebody who's from media, being somebody who's worked in broadcast and stuff like that, those good pieces, those good things that are happening in your community, those are the fluff stories. And they get about a minute and a half at the end of the show.
Right.
And
we
don't focus on the positive in our country anymore. We don't focus on the positive in our lives anymore. It's too easy to be sarcastic. Like you said, it's too easy to have the last word on Facebook. It's too easy to do that kind of stuff than to be the bigger, better person.
What did Yoda say when Luke Skywalker asked him if the dark side was stronger? He says, no, but it's the easier, more seductive
That's
path.
right.
You know?
Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to the dark side.
Leads to suffering.
Exactly.
Chris got beat.
That's right. That's right. And it's absolutely true. It's absolutely true. And it's one of those things, like y'all were saying, following that little voice. And when you found each other, feeling that tug and knowing that like something is happening here. Something is occurring, and being in tune with that is so important.
And you know what? You don't really need to know the way it's gonna go.
No,
like you don't have to see the ending. You know, what was like that movie where it says, "Build it, and they will come." You just have to have faith in it.
Field of dreams.
Field of dreams.
Field of dreams, man.
Build it, and they will come.
That's right. Yeah, and that's
you feel
absolutely
that calling.
true.
You feel that calling, and you know it's a good thing, and you just do it without knowing how it's going to end. And you'll see the ending when it gets there.
It's much like I've said for years. I worked with brands. I worked with all kinds of artists. I've made music for, good God, almost 20 years now. Have never sold a lick of it. But if you go onto my website, there's about 20, 30 hours of music. There's an amazing tome of music there. And I just make it. Because, hey, like Toulouse-Lautrec pretty much died a poor dude, but he kept making art.
Right. Yeah.
Like you're gonna keep doing it because it's what you do. Like it's what's
poor while he was alive.
It's what's inside of you, and you can't not do it. Now I would like to ask exactly the Voca, the voice inside you, and I'd like to ask Giovanna about that, especially as someone who came from the realm of art, from the realm of oil and canvas, to the realm of film. Is that something that you've felt in your life?
About, you mean how
you're going to create it, because like I told bands for years, like if you're going to make your own music, make your own music. If you want to make music if you want to make money on a Saturday night, you need to play other people's music.
Right.
Yeah.
But if you're going to make art, be ready to just make art.
Yeah, and I think you have to do it for yourself. I mean,
exactly.
I know what I left the art world when I was 19, and I do it now for myself. And
good.
It sort of transformed itself into storytelling. But the reason I did was, for very specific reasons. But I saw it in New York growing up in this area that it was, and I'm talking about the late 80s, early 90s.
Oh, yeah,
so
man. Keith Haring era. Beautiful,
right?
Beautiful time.
Right. And also Andy Warhol.
Absolutely.
I mean, he was ahead of his time with the whole 15 minutes of
visionary,
fame.
both of them.
He was on the pulse, right? But for me, it's a form of expression, an extension of that voice. Some people do it for commercial reasons, and I think that when you are, and I hated that word so much, artist. My friends from high school still call me artist, and I just had such a visceral reaction to it.
But so, you are.
I loved it.
Why the visceral reaction?
Well, no. And this is where I'm going with this. Is because you go back towards what you are. I was disappointed in the artistry in New York. It was very pretentious.
Oh, absolutely.
It was very exclusive. It wasn't about bringing you in to share your story.
No, it's cliquish. It's like being an actor in Hollywood. It's cliquish as hell.
Yeah.
Or a musician in Austin. It's incestuous.
It was cliquish as hell. And for me, when I was my thing then was, okay, I got into interior design school. I submitted my portfolio. And then my studio buddies from high school were inviting me to all these art events in Manhattan, in the city, and some of the exhibits were, to me, perplexing. I loved art history. I loved the great masters. I loved the chiaroscuro, the sfumato, the technique.
Yeah.
And to me, going into an art exhibit, and one particular one was when I said, that's it, I'm done. It was so pretentious. It was a room, art gallery, I think it was on Park Avenue, and all it was white walls.
Yes.
White walls.
Yeah, the blank canvas. It's whatever you see. There was oh my God, who was it? There was
But
there's
it is. But at the same time, I think there should be something very connecting to people and not making when you look at art, hopefully it brings you in something that you don't have to read a book to understand it. You don't have to necessarily be so profound in philosophy.
Yeah.
So for me, it was at the time, the 80s and 90s represented a period in art that I didn't want to be associated with. But moving forward, fast forward to now, I think the label of an artist is something really that now I feel like, oh wow, it never really left me. And that fussiness, that sort of, creative soul in a way is why I enjoy doing stories.
Yeah.
And now it's like you get to select, so you have the opportunity to work for me, like with John and Zach and stripping away, I think, the vanity, which is hard sometimes in this industry,
Yeah,
the vanity
it's extraordinarily hard, especially as an artist, because it's you, it's what you are. But I mean, what the exhibit that you were just talking about is actually the source of a lyric from one of my favorite Dire Straits, and then you have an artist who puts nothing on the wall. He puts an empty canvas and he hangs it on the wall, and it's nice. Absolutely true. And it is one of those facts of when you're creating something, an artist will create and they will keep creating. It doesn't matter. Yeah. They're creating for the fact of creation, and pays there, pays not there. Like, I don't know. I've never been paid penny one for my music, and I'm in the midst of writing some new stuff right now. Like, I'll keep writing. Right. And I'm going to keep writing.
That's an artist. It's not about that.
Yeah, I have a job.
It's about your creation.
But when it comes to filmmaking, there is a different form of art that goes on. There's a different form of storytelling. And Zach, what is it to you as a director that has brought the palette of life to film? What is it that, I guess, really drives you to try and tell these stories?
It's to relate to people, I think, to understand each other. I go back to those cave paintings. It's we've been talking about it a lot throughout our conversation, that there's so many things. I think John said it. There are commonalities and universal truths, and we have so many more similarities with each other than we realize. It's amazing, I think, what you can accomplish when you're kind of one-on-one with someone. You put your egos and hubris and life experiences maybe to the side for 45 minutes or so and just try to have a conversation. I don't know. When you put the camera in the room, sometimes that's all you need to be able to just break it down and make it possible. It's kind of counterintuitive, because you would think that with the camera people would get uncomfortable, and sometimes that happens, but a lot of times too, the camera is really just that third party that makes having the conversation or makes the conversation a lot more, real, and you transcend. I don't know why. I still can't really figure it out sometimes. But maybe it's just because you both recognize that it's really not about each of you. It's about trying to capture something in the moment that's happening, and then share it with other people. But that's why I do it. And the truth is that it is an imperfect medium, and when another medium comes along that can do it better, then maybe that'll be the day that I shift to that medium. I don't know, but for now, it's the camera and the screen. And
it's as I'm sure Giovanna could express. It's all about the palette that you use. It's all about the palette that you use for creation. Even myself as a musician, whenever I sit down to write something, it's with intention. I don't really go in with a blank concept. I go in with something that I want to write, and myself, whenever it came to writing lyric music, I always tended to write the guitar line before the lyrics. Even though I was a poet and wrote like tons and tons of poetry for a long time, I found it hard as an artist to write that structure without the structure being there. But when it came to my electronic music, when it came to the stuff that I do for soundtracking and things like that, it's much more of an emotive process, where instead of being so structured, it's more of using a palette of color and sound to express an emotion. And I find a lot of that in kin to directing photography, doing that kind of stuff. Because it's trying to express
emotion. You're trying to
it's trying to express it without words, and it's interesting because even the other night when I was in Massachusetts on a gig, we were outside smoking cigars and having scotch and stuff because it was a great day on the job, and we wrecked it with like 3 hours of sleep, and we were talking about the fact that audio is awesome, but video sucks without audio.
Right, they work hand in hand.
And even silent films had a score.
Oh yeah, there's a guy playing piano.
If you look at, and I've had the discussion with a friend of mine who does like 3D mapping and stuff like that. Like, you could make the most awesome 3D map in the world of like a wall crumbling and falling down. You subtract the sound.
Yeah.
And it's just a wall falling down. Like, you don't like emotively feel it.
Right.
And there's a marriage of mediums that goes on with the making of film.
Right.
That is so entirely crucial.
You've got the mind that's processing the visual, and then the sound that's kind of like telling you kind of like the medium, like how you should feel almost in a way, or kind of trying to progress.
Well, you have to remember, and John could probably ring in on this. There are 3 types of learning to the human brain, and it's visual, audio, and tactile. And as a former teacher, like, those are the things that you try and incorporate into a lesson so that it ingrains in a kid's mind. And with movies, the only thing you're missing is tactile.
Right.
You've got 2 types of learning going on. You've got visual and audio.
Yeah.
you know. But if you take away the audio,
right,
you've only got one, and the brain gets really bored really quick. Now, whenever it comes to that for you, Zach, as a director, what are you looking for when it comes to sound, when it comes to expressing that other part of the emotion other than what's happening on film?
Well, I mean, I think every project's different, but I think that the sound has to complement the image. I don't, you know, if there's something distracting about the audio that's taking away from what you're seeing on the screen, then, you know, then the two aren't working well together.
Sure.
A lot of times I use audio to kind of verify that I'm on the right track with an edit, actually, by turning it off entirely and watching the picture. And if I can understand the story, not by hearing anything, but just by watching, you know, the different cuts unfolding,
sure.
And, you know, I know I'm on the right track. And I mean, that goes back to, you know, just, you know, the silent era, and, you know,
I was going to say, yeah.
You know, where you had to convey story without the benefit of an actor speaking or a sound effect, you know, to, you know, to make sure, you know, to signify to the audience that something was happening. And then if those pieces are, you know, in sync and the story's making sense visually, then, you know, building on the sound and making sure, you know, obviously there are technical things that you want to make sure are in line. You know, if people can't hear the dialogue, that's a big issue.
Sure.
You know, you want to make sure that those things are audible. But then building, you know, a sound design and you know, music accompaniment, whether it's song selection or a score that complements the picture. And gosh, I mean, there's just such a huge spectrum with that. I personally have never worked on a really, really big budget piece, you know, an action film, you know,
sure.
in the hundreds of millions of dollars, where people are, you know, spending, you know, working on 50 tracks of audio like Lord of the Rings or something like that.
Yeah.
But it serves its purpose, you know. Like I can't imagine, you know, a film like Lord of the Rings without its wonderful sound design and score.
Yeah.
I mean, it won Oscars for that for good reason. But I've also seen the most simplistic, basic, minimalist things, you know, that use the absence of sound sometimes to, you know, to create a moment and the vacuum of, you know, of a scene, you know, or the presence of a noise that suddenly goes away, or, you know, it is amazing how our brains are programmed to perceive those things on a real intuitive level. I mean, you don't teach that stuff to people and say, like, this is what, you know, a good film should feel and sound like and look like. It's, you know, that you either get it or you don't. And that's what we're always striving to do. It's not show someone, you know, what a good film is. It's to try to make a really good film and have it be recognized by an audience that either gets it or doesn't get it.
Well,
you know?
Well, and absolutely, because, and I mean, to just start to kind of wrap things up, that takes us right back to the beginning of the spirit of Apollo to begin with. You know, like, you either get it or you don't. You either get the concept of coming together for something greater than yourself, or you don't. One of the two.
I think it's pretty universal story, and especially focusing on people that we can, you know, all of us can relate to, especially because they don't necessarily see themselves. We had an experience where, you know, sometimes we refer to some of Apollo's 400,000 strong workforce as heroes, you know, in our eyes. From my vantage point of this, you know, of my particular time and place, they are heroes.
They're the ones that got them there and back.
Feedback. We got some very clear feedback from certainly one person in particular, but I think it was a shared view by some that, you know, they didn't want to be considered heroes because to them, they didn't necessarily put their life on the line like astronauts did. They didn't, you know, necessarily come up with a major scientific breakthrough. They were just doing their job. But what but my response to that, what I would like people to know about the film is that, especially because people don't think that their story is remarkable.
That's right.
We're especially interested in it because those are the stories that we can relate to, that we can see ourselves in. And that's what I think is a very unique aspect of When We Were Apollo, and I'm just really excited for people to see it.
Absolutely. The story of the people with the slide rule is the story of Apollo,
Exactly.
Like, and Giovanna, as we close out, what would you like to say about your passion project that is When We Were Apollo?
This passion project. I want to engage people to follow us. And we have a Facebook page. We have a Twitter account. Guys, if you can help me out here, because my memory after 40.
Our best way to get updates is to join our email list, so people can sign up on our website at www.whenwewereapollo.com. So one of the most direct routes to follow what we're doing. And, of course, the Kickstarter page.
Absolutely.
We're also... Zach and John came up with a really great call to action that I would love for the audience and your listeners to contribute, their stories. The moonshot moments, right?
Right.
Right. We have two hashtags. We have two hashtags that we've started because one thing that for people who are following our film are going to be hearing more and more about is our effort to crowdsource Apollo stories, and really, talk about this conversation we've had about technology.
Yeah. What are
they
about?
We really are planning to marshal the internet and crowdsource this history. We crowdsource business, we crowdsource communications. Why shouldn't we crowdsource the writing of history or the preservation of history?
Yeah.
And so that's what we want to do with this project, and we really encourage anyone and everyone who has an Apollo story of their own or in their family to realize that it's valuable history, and please share it. And we can help you if you want help with phrasing or how to frame something, or just editing a picture or something. We can certainly help with that. But we would love for people to submit photos, stories, even video. Pull out your phone and record yourself, or record a 1-minute interview with your family member who worked on the Apollo program.
What are those hashtags?
Thank you. The hashtag, Zach, make sure I'm correct that we've just started them, so they're brand new.
Good.
Is hashtag My Apollo Story for all those who have contributed or been part of the Apollo program would like to share. We also have another one, because this is a universal story. One thing that we realize is that you didn't have to go to the moon to take a big risk and take a big leap and be part of something big.
Yeah.
And so we have another hashtag of stories that, whether they're related to Apollo or not, are stories of when we have taken our own moonshot, when we really went for it at a time in our life. And that's something that we want to prepare as well. And that hashtag is My Moonshot Moment. Zach, is that correct?
That's right.
I'll submit my moonshot moment.
Yeah, and so here comes the siren.
It could be anything.
I'm gonna put myself on mute, and Zach, keep telling them about the hashtag.
Zach, what are you doing over there that's attracting all the attention, bro?
This is me. That's my fault.
That's just LA, man. That's just LA.
That's John. John's getting all the...
Go ahead, John. I'm very sorry.
We're given a really good LA reputation.
That's right.
We're
That's
proving
right.
it right here.
Nice.
Representing properly.
Nice.
Representing it well. No, but John's right. It's my Apollo or my moonshot moment is really an attempt to explain to other people that even if you didn't have to go to the moon, you didn't have to be a part of Apollo per se, to do something great and to do something big, to take big risks in your own life.
Yeah.
And we see it as a way to try to bridge that gap and encourage people to not only participate in the process with us, but to see that connection between that spirit of Apollo and the amazing things that they've probably done in their own lives.
Absolutely. Because, most people don't realize, they don't really take the time, and I talk about it a lot in Thinking Deeply episodes. They don't take the time to actively listen to the tiny voice, because it's a small, quiet voice, and it's a tiny little tug behind your belly button that leads you places. That like I told
Sounds
kids
like it's
that
in my stomach.
like well, it's like I told kids that I taught. Like you'll feel it when you're at the party in college that I need to leave.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I really don't need to be here right now.
Boy, have I had that.
And you should listen to that voice. Right. You should go far, far away. If you learn to tune into that, you can really, really tune into so many synergistic moments.
It's that gut feeling.
Like the meeting of Zach and Giovanna. Like the joining of John to the triumvirate that is the making of When We Were Apollo.
That's why I like this whole story of these guys meeting. It was meant to happen.
Exactly. Like this movie was meant to be made.
Right.
That's the only way I can see it.
That's why
we're certainly proof positive of the spirit behind it. Not all of us are big space buffs, and not all of us feel the connection maybe to Apollo as specifically as others, but we all have that same underlying spirit, I think, and worldview, that we try to see the best in each other. We try to see the best in our country and in our future potential. And I think that, what's really, if you had to distill it down to one thing for me, it's that we really, I think as a species, we need waypoints along our path to keep us, headed in the right direction. And we don't want to lose track of this incredible episode in our history, because it is a real freaking amazing waypoint that shows us what, only I think an infinitesimally small piece of our overall potential. And if we can harness that, and if we can use that message and that underlying spirit to guide us into the 21st century.
Amen.
Boy, would I like to be around in a couple hundred years to see where we're at.
I would love to see the fact that we get to the point of Federation of Planets where people are, odd that the UN symbol looks really a whole lot like that, but to the point where there is, like you're saying, a universal understanding, a capital T truth, that we can all ascribe to, that we can all be behind, that we can all take part in, and that we can all believe that we can take part in, and it does take that open mind, it does take that open heart, it does take that open soul to feel the vibration of the other people around you.
Well, my philosophy is there's no country lines, We're all human beings on the planet.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's how I see it.
Exactly. And
y'all just drew that. Y'all drew that on the map.
And on that note, give us one more time where everybody can go to support the project When We Were Apollo. They can, of course, go to the website whenwewereapollo.com to check out any information, any updates, things like that. We definitely want to have you guys back on as the movie progresses,
for sure.
As things go on through the project, and once the movie is released, absolutely we want to have y'all on. So tell everybody where they can go to contribute to this awesome cause.
Well, right now you can go onto our Kickstarter page. The easiest way to find our Kickstarter page is actually through our website. There's a link to it, but you can also just Google When We Were Apollo Kickstarter, and you'll hit the page there. And our campaign is going for 5 or 6 more days now, and there'll be more opportunities in the future to contribute both financially and in other ways. Our campaign, as we've been talking about now as a group for the last few days, this one campaign is one stepping stone, and there are going to be plenty of other opportunities in the future. the project is going forward, and we're really excited, to be bringing it to the world in time for the 50th anniversary of the first moon landing in 2019.
And especially to anyone who may be listening, who maybe has an Apollo story in their family, or even just a moment when you took an action in your life that really embodied the spirit of going after big things. Please do share, and we're going to be compiling a very unique and extremely rewarding archive, both of Apollo stories and inspiring stories in general at those hashtags. So that's another way to contribute.
And one more time, those hashtags, just so our audience knows.
Yep. The hashtag for Apollo stories is My Apollo Story, all one word. And for additional stories of inspiration, it's My Moonshot Moment, all one word.
Fantastic.
So those two hashtags plus our website, www.whenwewereapollo.com, are the best places to connect.
Well, and, guys, I can't tell you what it means to have you on, to talk to passionate people about passionate things, to talk about deep things with deep people. Like this conversation went all over the map tonight, and it all relates back to the fact of doing what you believe in. Right. And when you see it, and when you see a story that needs to be told, when you see something that needs to be acted upon, that you act upon it in society, that you do your part. And that's the spirit of Apollo in my mind, that you do what you can to contribute.
History shouldn't be forgotten.
And on that note, thank you so much for joining the podcast tonight, guys. I cannot thank you enough. As
thank you so much.
We want to have you guys on in the future as things update, as things come about, and as the movie is released. And on that note, everybody, please make sure to remember we are a proud part of the HC Universal Podcasting Network. Make sure to stop by and check that out, hcuniversalnetwork.com.
Yeah.
And until next time, if you can't be good, be good at it.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Dudes and Beer Podcast. To listen to our audio streams and chat with us live, download the official Dudes and Beer app for both Android and iDevices, available on the Google Play and iTunes markets. For more episodes, content, and information, visit us online at dudesandbeer.com. You can also find our episodes on Spreaker, SoundCloud, YouTube, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast service. Thanks for listening, everybody, and until next time, drink responsibly.